All right, as you can see on the screen, the title for our message, it's part one of a three-part message, a story of grace from the book of Jonah, a story of grace from the book of Jonah. As I said, it'll be 3 sessions, and we'll be going through the story and pulling lessons out of it. Now, allow me to share the first 2 verses from the book of Jonah, and it says, "Now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness is come up before me." Now, when you first read the story, you got to ask yourself a couple of questions. Number one, who are the Ninevites? And number two, who is Jonah, and why didn't he want to go? So the first thing is, who are the Ninevites? Nineveh was the flourishing capital of the Assyrian Empire. So great. Who are the Assyrians? Well, the Assyrian nation, they were one of the cruelest and most violent empire of ancient times. Assyrian kings, they often recorded the results of their military victories, glorying in leaving a whole plain filled with corpses, filled with dead people, and they glory in burning the cities that they have conquered. Right? Historians say that Assyrian history is as gory and blood curdling as any history could be. Right? Of all the histories that we have known, they would capture their enemies. I want you to listen to this. They would capture their enemies. They would cut off their legs and one of the arms, leaving the other arm and hand so they could shake the enemy's hand in mockery as he was dying. They forced friends and family members to parade with the decapitated heads of their loved ones elevated on poles. Right? They would butcher their captures to pieces and burn them alive. Historians call them a terrorist state. The prophet Nahum, talking about Nineveh, he says, "Woe to the bloody city. It is all full of lies and robbery. The prey departeth not." Right? It used to be known as a bloody city. They had many gods. However, their main god was Asher. He was depicted, as you can see on the screen, as a winged sun that protected and guarded the king, who was his main servant. Right? The king was the main servant of this god. Now, above all, Asher was a god of war, and as such, war was intrinsic to the Assyrian national religion. Right? Every Assyrian military campaign was thought to be undertaken in response to the direct orders of Asher. Thus, participation in warfare was considered as an act of religion, as an act of worship of some kind. Right? It is like, if you bring it to our day today, it is like ISIS, where they feel that they are making war as part of their religion to gain their land back, and to spread their religion, and to destroy other faith and so forth. Right? So when you think of Nineveh, I want you to think of like what ISIS is. Right? That's what Nineveh was equivalent to our day. They were the enemies of Israel, and around the mid 800s, they began exacting heavy tribute from Israel during the reign of King Jehu, and continued to threaten the Jewish nation, and eventually they conquered the northern kingdom of Israel and so forth. Right? So that's who Nineveh was. They were a terrorist state. They were evil people. They were the enemies of God's people and the enemies of God. They were cruel and evil. Right? That's who Nineveh was. Okay. Now, to make it more interesting, you got to ask the question, all right, well, who was Jonah? Jonah was a prophet of God in Israel between 800 to 750 BC. We read the following about him. Notice what we read. In 2 Kings chapter 14, we read, in the 15th year of Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, began to reign in Samaria, and he reigned 41 years. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from all the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. Right? So he was a bad king. He did not reform Israel. He stayed in the bad ways. However, we keep reading. He restored the border of Israel from Lebo Hamath as far as the sea of the Arabah, according to the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, which he spoke by his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet, who was from Gethabar. For the Lord saw that the affliction of Israel was very bitter, for there was none left, bond or free, and there was none to help Israel. Okay. So why am I reading this to you? In the reign of this evil king, God chose Jonah, the prophet, to give the king a message to make war in order to gain the land of Israel back. In other words, Jonah was a patriot prophet. He loved his country. He loved Israel. He loved the nation, right? Through him, as we just read, God sent message to a wicked king to still make war and gain the land of Israel back. We do not read of Jonah rebuking the wicked king for his wickedness. Rather, we read of Jonah's support of the king in the war to restore the land. Now, why is this important? Jonah was at the same time as the prophets Amos and Hosea. These three prophets lived at the same time. They were prophets at the same time. God spoke through them at the same time, right? However, Amos and Hosea prophesied against the wickedness of their own nation, but not Jonah. Jonah was a patriot. He loved his country and hated the enemies of Israel. Both Amos and Hosea prophesied of Israel captivity. Notice, for example, we read in Amos, therefore will I cause you to go into captivity beyond Damascus, saith the Lord, whose name is the God of hosts. So through Amos, God prophesied that Israel will go into captivity. God, through Amos, spoke against the wickedness in Israel, right? Hosea was even more specific, and he says, when Israel was a child, then I loved him and called my son out of Egypt. As they called them, so they went from them. They sacrificed unto Baalim and burned incense to graven images. He shall not return into the land of Egypt, but the Assyrian shall be his king, because they refused to return. Okay, so as you can see, both Amos and Hosea, who lived at the same time as Jonah, they too, Amos and Hosea, prophesied against the wickedness of Israel, and prophesied of the destruction or the captivity of Israel that is to come, but not Jonah. Jonah was a patriot. God spoke through Jonah to support a wicked king in order to gain the land of Israel back. So let's put this picture together. On one hand, you have one of the wickedest nations on planet Earth at that time, the enemies of Israel and the enemies of Israel's God, living a wicked, godless, brutal life, butchering all those weaker than them mercilessly, torturing their victims to death, right? For fun, they did that. And on the other hand, you have three prophets, Jonah, Amos, and Hosea. Two of them, Amos and Hosea, rebuking Israel for their faithlessness and prophesying the captivity of Israel in Assyria. While the third, Jonah, is a patriot. He loves his nation and country. With God's permission, he supports the king in his war endeavors to gain land back to Israel. He hates Israel's enemies. He wants Israel to rule and to conquer. Are you with me? Now, out of the three prophets, God chooses Jonah, the patriot, and asks him to go to Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, Israel's enemies, with a message of warning, which is a manifestation of mercy extended to Nineveh. Are you getting the picture? God extends a message of mercy to the wickedest nation on planet Earth at that time, and chooses Jonah, a patriot, a nationalist, the prophet who loves his country and hates Nineveh, to deliver the message to, or to be the messenger, right? He was to deliver a message of mercy to the nation that was prophesied to take his own nation in captivity. Now, this presents two problems. One, there's a practical and a political problem. How could God ask anyone, let alone me, a patriot, a nationalist like me, to betray my country's interest, to warn our enemies, to give them an advantage, an opportunity to escape their damnation? I mean, that's a problem. And the second problem is a theological problem. How could a good God give a wicked nation like Assyria even the merest chance to experience this mercy? Why on earth would God be helping the enemies of his people? As far as human wisdom is concerned, this was a crazy and outrageous request of God. It is like asking a Jewish rabbi in 1941 to stand on the streets of Berlin and ask Nazi Germany to repent, or to bring it to our day now. It's like asking a Christian pastor to go to Afghanistan now and ask ISIS to repent of their sins and accept Christ as their savior. Are you getting the picture, right? As far as Jonah is concerned, there was neither political nor theological justification for such a request. So he does what most human beings do when they do not understand. He ran away. He tried to ignore the request. God said, go east. He goes west, right? In short, Jonah had a problem with the job given him, and a greater problem with the one who gave him the job. How could he, and why would he? Jonah did not see any justification for such a request. He could not see any good outcome coming out of it. And if I can't see it, then there isn't one. If I don't understand it, then it doesn't make sense. If I don't think it is beneficial, then there is no benefit in it. This led Jonah to doubt the goodness, the wisdom, and the justice of God. You have to understand that all that was going in the background of Jonah's mind. We all do what Jonah did in one way or another. We sit in the doctor's office shocked by the biopsy report and wonder, why would God allow such a thing to happen to me? We wonder why the seemingly romantic and perfect relationship came to an end. We wonder why I lost this job that I loved so much, or why this and why that. Many times we refuse to believe that God is still in charge. We question God's wisdom and care for us. If I was God, I would have done it differently. I would not do it this way. You know, I did this many times myself. I wondered why I did not get the property manager job, even after the owner of the real estate agency told me, you got the job, go and start. You can start working after the holidays. I wondered why I did not get a job in one of the banks after I was successful in 2 interviews. I wondered why God did not sell my house when I put it for sale 10 years ago. Every time I asked God for something and did not get it, I wondered how God runs things. I mean, why would he and how could he? I wonder if he really heard my prayers, right? Even now with this COVID situation and the lockdowns we're facing and so forth, I wondered, why would God allow such a thing? I mean, I would have much preferred to be with you in person. to still travel around and to meet with God's people and to be encouraged by them and encourage them, right? Why would God allow such things to happen? I mean, whenever things like this happen, we, each one of us, have to decide, does God know what is best, or do I? Naturally, we always think we know best. I know best. And you know why? Because deep down inside, many of us doubt the goodness of God. We do not really fully believe that God is committed to our happiness and has my best interest in mind. Um, so when these things happen, when we cannot see anything good in the situation we're in, we assume there isn't anything good. This was the cause of humanity's fall. God told Adam and Eve, don't eat of this tree. He told them the consequence of eating of the tree. He said, if you eat of it, you will die. But he never told them why. He didn't give them the reason why it's wrong to eat of it. So Eve decided that if I don't think of a good reason why I should not eat, then there isn't any, right? Eve placed her trust in her own wisdom and judgment, showing that she does not trust in God's best intentions for her, in God's love and care for her. Disobedience to God is the outward manifestation of lack of trust. That is what disobedience is. That is what Jonah did, and that's what many of us do. We place our thoughts above God's thoughts, our judgment above his judgment. And the reason for it all is because we are not sure, we are not rooted and established in his love and care for us. In Jeremiah, we read, thus saith the Lord, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, neither let the mighty man glory in his might. Let not the rich man glory in his riches, but let him that glorieth glory in this, that he understandeth and knoweth me, that I am the Lord, which exercises loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness in the earth. For in these things I delight, saith the Lord. Our glory is not found in our own reasoning, wisdom, and strength. It is found in him, in knowing him, and in understanding his character, his love, and his commitment to us. That's what the verse means. That is where our strength and security is found, in his love for us, not in our wisdom. You know, we're living in very interesting times, to say the least. The world will never go back to the way it was. At least it doesn't look like it. Laws are passing, at least here in Australia, that infringe onto our basic human rights. As a human being, I have the right to choose what goes into my body and what doesn't. I have the right to choose how far from my house I can travel. I have the right to choose not to tell you where I was this morning if I don't want to, right? Yet in some parts of Australia, these basic privileges are no longer ours. I'm not speaking against or for the vaccine. You with me? God gave each one of us, God gave you the freedom of choice, and you have the power, you have the liberty to choose whether to take the vaccine or not to take the vaccine. Your faith could take you away from the vaccine, and your faith could take you through the vaccine. It is between you and God. It's not for me to decide. All I'm saying is that we're living in very troubling times. And to all we know, it could be the signs of the coming of the Lord. It could be the beginning of much worse things to come. And if it is the case, you need to enter those uncertain days with certainty. You need to enter those troublesome times with peace in your heart, with assurance and confidence that God has your life in his hand, that God has the best intention for you, that his plan is the best for you, and that regardless what comes, he is and will always be on the throne. Our glory, our security, and our strength can only come from knowing him. Jeremiah said, let not him, but let him that glorieth glory in this, that he understandeth and knoweth me, that I am the Lord, which what? Which does something, which exercises loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness in the earth. For in these things I delight, saith the Lord. Our glory and security ought to come from knowing and from understanding what our God is like. From knowing him, meaning having an experiential knowledge, a relationship with him. And understanding, meaning we need to understand what he is like. We need to know his character of love, judgment, and righteousness. Jesus said, and this is life eternal, that they might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent, right? Yes, eternal life is a gift we receive from God. As we accept Jesus, our Savior, we receive eternal life. Yes, it is based on knowing, meaning having a relationship with God and his Son. But what I'm trying to highlight to you, in light of these evil days we're living in, is that as we go through trouble, through hardship, through persecution and uncertain days, these uncertainties will have an impact on our lives, and hence on our thinking and on our faith. And unless we know the Lord, unless we understand his character, his faithfulness, his dedication and commitment to me, I will, like Eve, like Jonah, and many others, buckle under the pressure and under the uncertainties and doubt God's love and commitment to me. And you must understand that this doubt is a precursor of distrusting the Lord, or taking the matter into my own hands, or trusting my thoughts and my ways instead of God's thoughts and God's ways. That is why Jesus said, life eternal is to know God and his Son. Because as you know God, as you know Jesus, meaning as you have an experience with him, you will understand God's character and commitment to you. And when trouble hits your life, your understanding, your confidence, and your assurance in God's love for you will carry you through. Yes, I don't understand why God allowed me to get cancer, for example. Yes, I don't understand why God allowed me to lose my job. I don't understand why God allowed me to close the casket on my loved one, or whatever trouble you're going through. We might not understand why God allowed it, but I understand his character. I understand that he is for me. I understand that his love for me is an everlasting love. It's an unbreakable love. I know and understand that he wants the best for me. So even though I don't see his loving hand now, I know that he is with me. I know that he has a better plan for me. I will trust him even though I don't see him. Having that knowledge and that trust keeps you in that eternal life, keeps you in that trusting relationship, keeps you connected with God. Now, back to Jonah. God's request did not make sense to Jonah. There were political and theological implications that made no sense at all to Jonah. So Jonah decided to go west instead of east. He decided to run away from God. Now, whenever we think of running away from God, we think of immorality, we think of godlessness, we think of disobedience, right? We think that so long I'm living a morally right life, I'm not running away from God. We think that so long I am doing what God asked me to do, I am not running away from God. Well, I beg to differ. Please consider Paul's argument in the first 3 chapters of Romans. In chapter 1, he talks about the Gentiles, the godless, the immoral, and brands them as sinners, right? In chapter 2, he talks about the Jews who make their boast in the law, yet they dishonor God by breaking the law. And in chapter 3, he concludes, there is none that understandeth, there is none that seeketh after God. They are all gone out of the way. They are together become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. The Jews who outwardly lived by the law were no better than the Gentiles. They all ran away from God. They all gone out of the way, Paul says. You see, the story of Jonah illustrates both aspects of running away from God, as it is illustrated by Jesus in the parable of the prodigal son. There's two ways to run away from God. First is by disobedience and immorality, right? Jonah refuses to obey and runs from God. Then later on, he repents and asks for God's mercy and grace. Just like the prodigal son who takes his inheritance and runs from his father, then later he repents and he comes back to his dad. This illustrates a running away from God by disobedience and immorality. Both Jonah in the first part of the story and the younger son, they both ran away from God by immorality and disobedience. However, there is another way of running away from God. There is another style of running away from God, which is illustrated by the second half of Jonah's story and by the elder brother in the parable. And it is running away by obedience and morality. You see, in the second half of the story, Jonah obeys God, warns the city, but his heart is far from God's heart. He gets angry at God for exercising mercy at the inhabitants of Nineveh. Just like the older son who stays home, obeys the dad, but his heart is far from his father's heart and is angry at his father for accepting the younger son back, for forgiving the younger repentant son. At first, Jonah externally ran away from God by disobeying him. And later, he internally ran away from God or distanced himself from God by obeying God. But when things did not go his way, the veneer of morality, the mask of obedience he had put on, very quickly collapsed. In the first case, Jonah chose to run away by outwardly distancing himself from God. We fully understand this situation. It's easy for us to pick it, right? But in the second case, Jonah chose to run away by inwardly distancing himself from God. Outwardly, he obeyed, thinking that his outward obedience will get God off his back. If I obey him, he will stop pestering me. I will do all the good things that the book says, and I will no longer be swallowed by a fish, right? That's Jonah's thinking. I'll do what God says and I will be fine. I will stay on solid ground the rest of my life, right? I will go on with my life as usual. And the thing is, the reason I'm sharing this is many of us are in this condition without even realizing it. I will obey. I will do whatever you say. Just let me live my life in peace. Outwardly, we appear close to God, but inwardly, we are distancing ourselves from God. But this inward distancing from God that has been hidden for a long time under the veneer of morality and obedience becomes an outward, obvious rejection and doubt the moment things don't go our way. We become furious with God for not doing it our way, and we walk away. So there are two ways to run from God. One, externally by disregarding God and living a wicked life. Two, internally by obeying God just to conform, but outwardly, but our hearts are far from him. Jesus put it this way: this people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Both of these both of these ways of running away from God assume the lie that we cannot trust God's commitment to our good. We cannot trust that God has the best intention for us and his plans are best for us, right? In both scenarios, we are avoiding getting close to God. We are avoiding a hard commitment. We are avoiding internally surrendering all to him because we are not sure what God is like. We are not sure that God has the best intentions for me, that God is committed to my good, right? Some Christians think that the best way to avoid Jesus is to avoid sin. We view God as a policeman. If I don't break the law, then he won't stop me. I'll keep him far by obeying the law because I'm not sure of his intentions if he stops me, right? So if I avoid speeding, I avoid the policeman. If I avoid sin, I avoid Jesus. I will still be in good terms with him. He will have nothing against me, and he will leave me to live my life in peace. That is what I call moralistic Christianity. Live a moral life. No headache from people, no headache from God. This way, I'm in charge of my life. You see, in both scenarios, Jonah tries to get control of the situation. First, he wants to receive mercy from God without being changed by it. And later he gets angry at God for giving mercy to those whose lives were changed by it. This situation that we're talking about in here leads to discovering another hard problem that plagued Jonah and plagues many Christians today. Jonah never ever saw himself as a sinner. He always saw himself as a Jew, a member of the chosen nation, better than these heathen Gentiles. I'm talking about Jonah, I guess, for the exception of while he is in the belly of the fish, right? But in most of the story, almost in all the story, Jonah never saw himself as a sinner. And this blinded him from the fact that just like the heathen, pagan citizens of Nineveh, he also was living wholly by the mercy and grace of God. You see, denominationalism, just like nationalism, many times gives you a subconscious superiority complex. You think you are better than others because you know more than they do, or because you do things, or you do more things than they do, or you're more righteous in your acts, in your life than them. At least that's what you think. And when you're in that position, you find it very hard to comprehend how could God be merciful and just at the same time. How could he be merciful to the Catholic priest who knows no better than what he grew up in and lived all his life, and just at the same time? How could God be merciful to this Trinitarian pastor and just at the same time? All along, you forget that you, just like the Catholic priest, just like Jonah, just like the Ninevites, just like anyone else, you and I are sinners saved by grace. You see, the problem is that Jonah wanted a God of his own making. He wanted a God who is merciful to the Jews and just to the Gentiles, merciful to me and just to you. And when he got wind that God could behave differently than what he wanted, he ran away. He chucked a fuss. So for now, my question to you is this: Have you come to know and understand God's character of love, God's commitment to you? Have you come to understand and to know that He exercises loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness? Have you gotten to the place where you know, you are sure, you are confident of God's love, commitment, and dedication to you? With this in mind, allow me to, and we'll close with this segment, allow me to highlight a phrase Jesus said during his Last Supper with the disciples, which speaks of an amazing covenant he makes with his followers. Notice what Jesus said. And he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remissions of sins. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. Now, many times we read verse 29 there and keep going without discerning the true meaning and beauty of those words. You see, the way Jesus spoke was common or was not uncommon for the disciples. So they understood what Jesus meant, right? The disciples were Jews. Let me compare these words with other words that were spoken in the book of Acts. Notice what we read in Acts 23, verse 12. And when it was day, certain of the Jews banded together and bound themselves under a curse, saying that they would neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. This was a common way of making an oath. It means, may I die if I don't fulfill what I just said, or I will do what I promised, even if it kills me, right? Many times they used to kill an animal or split it in half, either kill the animal, spill its blood, or cut the animal in half and walk through it, like in the story of Abraham. That was the way they made and established their oath, right? It is a bit gruesome for us, but this was the custom back then. They lived in a different culture. They did things differently, right? The idea of it is that the oath was taken very seriously. It was like saying, if I don't fulfill my promise, may my blood be spilled and may I die, may I be cut in half, right? That's what these behaviors illustrated, and that's what they said. So if you go back to what Jesus said, he said, I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. Jesus was establishing a new covenant with his people. He was promising with an oath that he is unconditionally committed to his people. He is promising on his life that he will make sure he will take it upon himself that his people will be with him in the Father's kingdom, and especially during that feast in heaven, right? The wedding feast of the Lamb. I hope you understand how assuring and confident building this promise is, this verse is, if you understand it. If you accept him as your Savior, if you make him your Lord and Savior, Jesus promised on his life that you will be with him in the kingdom, that you will be seated on the table with him, and you will drink that wine or juice with him. Now, this speaks of uncomprehendable love, and understanding this love, knowing God's character in this way fuels your spiritual life and walk. It boosts your confidence, especially as you go through uncertain and evil days. You see, as followers of Christ, the understanding regarding our salvation brings joy to our hearts. But understanding and comprehending God's love brings revival to our hearts and lives. It brings confidence that enables us to stand when the majority falls. So I really want you to get this point. If there is only one thing you can get from this first part, it is this: are you sure? Are you confident? Are you 100%? Do you 100% understand that God is for you? That even when things go bad, when situations are difficult, when the world offers uncertainty to you, like what we're living in, because of this COVID, many people, friends of mine, are in the process of losing their job because they convicted not to get vaccinated, and unless you get vaccinated, you will lose your work, right? So they are really challenged in facing a situation where, Lord, I want to honor you, but I'm paying a heavy price for it. Now, unless you understand God's character, unless you know and you're 100% sure that God is for you, time will come when the difficulty will be so hard that you will doubt, that you will buckle under it. So what I'm asking you to do is understand that Jesus has promised, he has promised on his life that if you accept him as your savior, he is unconditionally committed to you. He is on your side. He is working for your benefit. And even if you don't see his helping hand, even if you don't see his loving care manifested now, you need to be sure that he is for you, and go through this dark spot that you don't see his light of love in it. Go through it knowing that he is for you. And if you do that, if you have that confidence in his love, you will be able to do that, and you will be able to stand. Anyway, I think I made my point clear. I will leave it at that for now. We will close with a word of prayer, and in my next session, I will continue sharing thoughts from Jonah. So please join me as we pray. Our Father in heaven above, we thank you, Lord, with all our hearts for your love, for your mercy. I thank you for your blessings. I thank you for this opportunity I have to, even though I'm not there in person, but through this video, I'm able to be with your people. I pray that you bless each and every one of them, Lord. And I pray that you will give us that confidence, that assurance of your love. So as we go through hard times, we will be able to stand. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.